Welcome back to the fifth and final segment of Sex, Brains and Money on October 26, 2012. I'm just going to wrap up the show today with a couple of remarks about today's episode. As you can tell, it's been a very sexy episode, and we've had sexuality dominating all three segments. And I think that that's something that's really good to talk about. And I think that sex is something that connects all of us in different ways, one way or another. I mean, you can have connections between people at a sexual level or an emotional level or a psychological level, intellectual level, what have you. But at the core of it, it all has to do with your feelings and how you're feeling about yourself and how you're feeling about another person. So there was something that I was going to talk about during Leo's segment before it got a little bit too long, and that's the way that sex and sexuality have changed over the last century or so. Up until the creation of the birth control pill and other types of protection and contraception, sex and reproduction were inherently linked with each other. You couldn't have sex without eventually having a baby, and you couldn't have a baby without first having sex. That has changed considerably. In the past, you could not have one without the other, but now that you can, it means that we can look at these things in a very, very different way. Sex no longer has to be stuck in that paradigm of reproduction of the species, and reproducing with somebody that you love, even if they're of the same sex, is now possible. And you can have children with somebody that you can't necessarily reproduce with and still raise a really great family. Now, a couple of philosophers, Michel Foucault and Anthony Giddens, have talked about this at length, and they've talked about how the separation between reproduction and sexuality has had such a major impact on the way that we view sex in society. And now we can step back and just look at sex as something that we can use to connect with each other, look at sex as something that we can use to enjoy ourselves, look at sex from a neurological and biological perspective as something that brings us pleasure, something that burns calories for those of you who are trying to lose weight, something that just makes you feel really, really good about yourself. And the fact that you can connect with somebody else at such a deep and valuable level, or at a very shallow and superficial level, is really up to you. So I'm going to close out the episode with that little remark about sex and sexuality, and I'm going to promise that we're going to talk lots more about sex in future episodes. So thanks again for joining us. Thank you so much to Leo Ferraro and Cleocatra. Thank you again to my wonderful producer, David Grossman, and our creative director, Lior Kananev. This is Sex, Brains and Money on the All Talk TV network. Thanks for joining us.